So we've got 100 kilograms on the bar for Kevin's next set. But before we press away with this, we're going to talk about some common cues that you may hear that you haven't heard me talk about yet. And one of them is tucking the elbows. So tucking the elbows is kind of correct, but unfortunately, it's one of those cues that gets misinterpreted way too much. And the reason why I haven't used it yet is because when the body moves correctly, it just naturally happens. So laying down on the bench, we know that when Kevin pushes his heels down, he's extending his hip joint. Extension of the hip joint anteriorly rotates the pelvis. Anterior rotation of the pelvis is paired with extension of the spine. Extension of the spine, can you arch for me, Kev? Will naturally allow for his scapula to sit where they want to sit, which is retracted and depressed. Now, retraction and depression of the scapula is also paired with external rotation of the humerus. Put your arms out in front of you, Kevin. So externally rotate that bone and watch where his elbows point. His elbows are pointing down, which is enough tucking for the movement the way that I want it. Now let's talk a little bit about why we want the elbows to tuck in the first place. So right here we have the scapula, and on the scapula sits all of our rotator cuff muscles. If you feel around for this bony landmark here, that's called the spine of the scapula. Above the spine of the scapula sits the supraspinatus. The supraspinatus comes under the acromion and attaches to the top of the humerus. Now, when the elbows are flared, which is a technique that you don't want to be doing with the bench press, we are shortening the space between the humerus and the acromion, which will create impingement of the supraspinatus tendon. So, how much do we need to tuck the elbows? That's enough to create enough space for the supraspinatus tendon to be able to move freely without being rubbed on by the humerus and the acromion. One of the most common errors that I see, or misinterpretations from the cue when people use the cue, tuck the elbows, is a lot of people pressing from this position here. This is unnecessary. This turns the bench press into too much of a tricep exercise. In a powerlifting competition or in a strength movement, my goal is to use as much muscle as possible to be able to shift the heaviest loads possible as safely as possible. And tucking the elbows too much is going to switch off a lot of our strong pushing muscles, which is going to be our pecs. So in a bodybuilder's technique, you might see flared elbows in an attempt to utilize a lot of the pecs, but unfortunately, this is that flared elbow position that can create impingement at the supraspinatus tendon. So tucking the elbows is all about shoulder health, and from this position is still going to allow us to push as much weight as possible, as safely as possible. So, is tucking the elbows a good cue or not? Well, if Kevin came to me and was benching like this, I would use the cue tuck the elbows. On the flip side, I have some lifters that come to me because they've read somewhere in a book that they should be tucking their elbows, or they've been taught by another coach or read from some text that they should be tucking the elbows, and they press from this position. A cue that I might give this lifter is to flare the elbows. Do I want him to be flared here? No. Okay? I want him to be in the neutral position. Okay? But that's a cue that I'm only going to give when necessary. Now, let's see how Kevin bench presses 100 kilograms. Same cues, let's do it all again. Starting the bench, sitting on the edge of the bench, so when he lays down, he's not going to bang his head on the bar. Sliding back so his head is off the bench so he can get his feet back far enough. Up on the balls of his feet, he's going to push his heels down, maintain that downwards pressure throughout the entire movement, grabbing the bar in his preferred grip. So preferred grip, we will have other variations where he might do a close grip bench press, that's fine, but all day today he's going to be doing his strongest grip. Index finger on the outer ring of a powerlifting bar. Heels down, slide into position, so his eyes are behind the bar. Taking a big breath, retract the press his scapula. 3 reps. Lowers the bar down to his chest under control. And straight back up, thinking about pushing in a straight bar path. And relax. Nice and easy. That was 100 kilograms. Now, remember, the recommendation that I give is you need to earn the right to add the weight to the bar. And I want you guys to start looking at what I'm going to be looking at that's going to tell me that I should stop putting weight on the bar. So as we know, that's 100 kilograms for Kevin. We know his history, he can bench press 240 kilograms, so we're way off that. We're less than half of his max now. So the way that it's moving tells me as well, he's okay to go up to our next increment. 120 kilograms up next.